Hi, I'm Julian Ryan of the SIO Stories and Organizations group, which is part of the National Storytelling Network. And I'd like to welcome all of you to our Story Swap. It's a tradition that was started many years ago by Pete Griffin and Tom Sparrow. And every year we take advantage of this time of year to build some stories that come from our members and build it around a certain theme. And this year's theme is about change and resilience and resistance sometimes too, when we think about what we went through this year. So I am really eager to listen to people's stories and share. So now I'm going to be asking for a volunteer to start. So welcome.
I would be happy to go first because I'm not sure how long we're going to last here. But everyone, this is my grandson, Bodie. And our theme this year is crisis, problem, opportunity, fitting into the theme that Jules mentioned. And I've been a freelance performer for more than 30 years. And I found that the best way for me to make a living, besides kind of high profile, high paying gigs, is when I get a cluster of shows all together. And for me, typically it's been with schools. And I was thrilled a few years ago to have a set of schools that brought me into Chicago to perform there during January. And there were maybe 7, 8 shows, all happening in a 3-day period. And I did the first set, and my wife had come with me for this
What's it?
particular show.
Okay, be safe.
And then the weather was already cold, but it got absolutely frigid, below freezing, and it snowed. And the whole city school system shut down. And so I live in Cincinnati, and it's 350 miles to get there. And they closed for the next 2 days. So I'm basically screwed because I've got all this, I'm so excited, I've got all this great work, but now it's all canceled. So I'm going to have to drive home. Then if I can reschedule all the schools, which is kind of quite a challenge to get everybody at the same time to do a makeup performance. It's just really tough. So I'm distraught about that. Is Bodie just thinking about it is like, oh, that's terrible. But what happened was I tried to find what else could I do, or my wife and I do. And we called a friend who's very well connected. And this friend had found this social service agency that was having a daycare for kids, and then another shelter house that was still meeting. The shelter house, the people were living there. And then the other place, the kids were there. So we were very excited about that. And we went there. And as we were going, I got a phone call that the local television station in Chicago wanted to follow us. And so this was just a free show that we're going to do because our shows were canceled. And now, there's no better publicity than to get a television spot doing something admirable. So we're just so excited. And then I checked in with the places we're going, and they said, absolutely not. You cannot bring a reporter in there, and for sure you cannot bring in a video crew. This is a sensitive situation that these kids are in, and you cannot do that. So I just went from, oh, everything's canceled, to, oh, I'm doing something good, to, oh, we have a chance to get, a great television spot, to, oh, we're just going to do these spots. And it wasn't an easy thing to do because the weather was terrible. And we were staying in the far north side of Chicago. And these places that we were going were on the far south side. But anyway, we did the first presentation, which went very well. It was kind of like a small 15, 20 kid in an auditorium, a typical show. And they were really happy and it was really fun. But then what I wanted to really get to was that this other place that we went to, this other place that we went to was an apartment complex that was for victims of domestic violence. And when we got there, we weren't even sure we were in the right place. There was no markings of where we were to be. We saw that it was the right address. Nobody answered the door, and we're knocking on the door. And finally, somebody opened up the door, and then they said, yeah, come on in. And they took us up to the second floor living room. And then they said, yeah, somebody will be here soon. And nobody came. And we're just like, oh my gosh, what are we doing here? But then this little girl showed up, and then her mother showed up. And then another little girl and another mother. And pretty soon, the room wasn't packed, but it was filled with these children and their mothers. And I did some of my juggling and story. My wife shared a story, and it was just beautiful. And the kids were having so much fun, and we did some activities, and they're all laughing and applauding each other. And then as we were leaving, this woman, and it's all African American, we're the only white people there, but she reaches out her arms and she gives me this big hug, you know, and she says, you don't know what you did for all of us today. You're like an angel who came into our household. And we didn't know what we were going to do with our kids today when they're off school. And you showed up, you know, just, I want to thank you so much. And she just gave me and my wife this gigantic hug. And the kids were all over us, and we gave them some little treats. And it doesn't get better than that, you know? Sometimes it's different than that, but that was like one of the most rewarding performances ever on the day that it was sub-zero and snowing and everything had been canceled. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. That's really special. Thank you. All right. Who'd like to step forward and go next? And I see Carol McCormick is joining us. So that's great.
Will you be recording this session? I have to leave for work and I can't be in two places at once.
Who is this, Carol?
Carol, yes.
Yes, we are. And we're recording you as you speak too. So yes.
Okay. So then I would access the recording by going on the website?
Yes. Give me a few days. And
Okay.
that does come and it happens. So we do connect with the website.
Okay. Well, I will be off then. Thank you.
Okay. Cheers. Nice to see you or hear you.
Well, I'll just pick someone since nobody raised their hand. So I pick Shannon. She's always got a story, I'm guessing. Of course, you can say no, you can pass, Shannon. But if you're out there and you have a story,
yeah. I thought it was like a you have to throw your name in the hat situation.
Yeah, I was going for the more gentle approach, but this works. It's like trained by the nuns, like I had.
I don't even know how you guys roll.
I know.
What's our parameters? What's the like? Do we have a time limit? Do we have a theme?
a couple of minutes, and I know I paraphrased our theme, so Tom was far more
Oh, I
truthful than
just
what the
got here.
original theme was. So
Tom
Tom,
was telling his story when I got here, so I'm
Yeah. Oh, the theme was crisis, problem, opportunity. So kind of when there's a conflict, there's some resilience that can happen, something that can lead to an opportunity. The team, do you have anything more to add about that?
I was going to say, Shannon, I'll take you out of the hothouse and share a story. It's a rusty story. It's one I haven't told in years and I hadn't really thought of, but I think it qualifies. Years ago, when I was a second tour officer serving in the Dominican Republic, my family and I were invited to go to Mocha. Mocha is a town sort of in the northern part of the country. We were living in the southern part of the country in the capital city, Santo Domingo. But any good diplomat knows that you need to get out and about to understand your host country so that you can make just decisions about people who want to visit or live in our country, and also reflect accurately to the United States what's happening in your host country. So you always jump on the bandwagon when there's an opportunity to travel outside of the capital city. And on this particular day, we were taking an old country road on our way to Mocha. And what should happen? But boom, we hit what some people might call a pothole, but others would definitely say lunar crater. And it took out both the front and back tires on our vehicle on the passenger side. Well, our host was distraught. The woman who had invited us said, "We have one spare tire, but two? This is a disaster." But ever the optimist, I said, "No, there's got to be a blessing somewhere in here. What is the name of this place?" And they told me, Arroyo Vuelto. And that translated means the stream returns. Arroyo Vuelto. Well, there was a little kiosk, a kind of shack that was selling some goods and food. And we talked to the person and asked her about the place. And she said, "Oh, you don't know? No, never been here before. There's this incredible little stream. You probably want to walk just a few paces and find it, where a tree is being transformed into stone." And we're like, "What? This sounds amazing." And so we made our little trek down to the stream. And sure enough, we found this mighty tree, incredibly beautiful, resplendent tree planted by this small stream with cold water obviously coming down from the mountains. And it did look as though the roots of the tree were transforming into stone. Well, we were amazed, we were grateful. And by the time we got back to the road, the car had been fixed and we were back on our way to Mocha. But the moral of the story is, rather than embracing the script, oh, that this is disastrous, this is terrible, maybe you want to look for the blessing within, and you just might find the stream returns. And that is how the story goes. Hey ho.
thank you so, so much. That is beautiful. So finding the gift and finding the blessing. So thank you. Well told. Shannon, are we still on the hot? Oh, so Sarah's raised her hand. That's great.
Okay, I want to tell a story.
Okay.
Fits right in with what we just heard, I think. Once there was a woman who had a small farm. She had a horse and she lived there with her son. Now this horse was a beautiful white horse. She'd had the horse since it was very small. It really had become a part of the family as far as she was concerned. Well, the villagers nearby felt that they needed to come and give her some advice. So out they came and they said, you know, that horse is a blessing. If you sold that horse, you would be able to have enough money to live the rest of your life worry-free. We think you should sell that horse. Well, she said, that's your opinion. Thank you for your concern. The fact is, this horse has been with me a long time. This horse is a part of the family, so I will be keeping the horse. Well, the villagers went away, shaking their heads. She just doesn't get it. Not long after that, the woman came out to the stable and the horse was gone. Well, the villagers all came and said, well, see, we thought it was a blessing, but now it's a curse. If you'd sold that horse, you would have had the money and you'd be okay, but now you have nothing. The woman said, well, thank you for your concern. That's your opinion. The fact is, the horse is gone, and that's all I can say right now. Well, the villagers left again, shaking their heads. She just doesn't get it. Not long after that, that horse came back with 11 other beautiful wild horses into her corral. Well, the villagers came back and said, well, we were wrong. It wasn't a curse, it was a blessing. Look, all these horses have come back to you. And the woman said, thank you for your concern. That's your opinion. The fact is, my horse came back and brought some others with him. And that's all I know at this point. Again, the villagers left. Well, not long after that, the woman's son was trying to tame one of the horses and it bucked him off and he fell and broke his leg. Oh, the villagers came back. We were wrong. It was a curse. Those horses are a curse. We thought they were a blessing. The woman said, thank you for your concern. That's your opinion. The fact is, my son has fallen and been hurt. Whether it's a curse or a blessing, I don't know. I just know that fact. Again, they left. And shortly thereafter, the king of the neighboring country decided to declare war on that country. So the king of the country in which the woman lived sent out his soldiers to conscript all the young men to fight in the war. Well, the villagers came back. Oh, we thought that pain and suffering of your son was a curse. It turns out it was a blessing. Our sons are all gone. We'll never see them again. It's just terrible. The woman said, well, thank you for your concern. That's your opinion. It's true. It's a fact. My son did not have to go to war, but your sons have gone to war. And my hope is that they will return to you healthy and safe. Well, this time the villagers left, kind of nodding to each other and thanking the woman for the hope she had given them that a curse could be a blessing or a blessing could be a curse. One never knew. One just had to work with it.
Yay. Hands, double hands.
Thank
Sarah,
you.
where's that story from? I've heard similar versions of it.
I have no idea. I just heard it for so long and I changed it from a man to a woman and I added the fact and fiction thing this year. So I don't know. And
Thank you.
it's everybody's to tell.
Mhm, mhm.
Timeless. Yeah. Thank you. Anyone else?
I've come today. I've not been an active part, but I have been watching and listening to everyone for actually quite a while. I attended one conference in 2000, I won't even tell you, quite a few years ago.
Okay.
But my world is a world of writing books about families and sharing their stories. So I'm in the print media and the writing media versus the oral history, even though my intrigue, I've been intrigued all along because of the of what I always describe to people. You guys are the real storytellers. You know, you're the active, the animated, that sort of a thing. And I try to bring some of that into my writing. However, I also came today and it's the Ubuntu point. In other words, I am who I am because of you are. And I was looking for some joy and laughter and insight into who you are. So I'm not here to tell a story today, maybe next time. But with a theater background, it's in me somewhere.
I'd like to know more about the books that you're writing.
I write family histories. So the work that I do is, it's not genealogy, even though genealogy is a part of it. I've built a model for the work that I do. So it goes through 4 stages: organization, because so many people need help to organize their stuff, right? Their memorabilia. research, in other words, the genealogical component of it, the research, no matter where that is, the writing part of it, and production. And so we come through those 4 stages with an actual published book that can range from 100 pages to 300, 400 pages long. So
Wow.
they're big projects, but this part is just, I wanted to gather some joy. I needed to be inspired today. So I showed up. Thank you, Sarah, for asking.
Oh,
And I
sure.
think, Sarah,
Yeah.
do we see each other on Facebook? I think we see our names.
Probably, and at storytelling gatherings and presentations.
Probably not, because this is really the first one I've become a part of.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Thank
So,
you.
mhm.
Thanks, Mary.
Special. Thanks for being that group for you. Shannon, you are armed with a coffee cup now. This looks promising. Okay, are you ready? Or are you still kind of in creative mode? Because I can offer a commercial break and give us a mini story in the meantime. So your choice.
To be quite honest, I really didn't, I thought I was going to be listening today, but I couldn't, like, the problem with what I would share is that it's not formed, but I'd love to tell you about some work I did with an organization this year that I think falls in your theme, if that sounds interesting.
Well, it'll be a workshop the idea, and then I'm sure you're going to turn it into a story you'll be using. So go for it.
Would it be possible to do screen sharing while I'm doing this? Because
If I can do that, I would be happy to. Hold on a second. All right, this is. Where are you, Shannon? Hold on a second.
do you
Okay,
mean
this is.
oh,
Sorry, I know how to do it usually, and I'm advanced here. So, okay.
Oh my
So
God, can we take a commercial break for the baby that's in the room now?
yes, okay. Okay, I'm putting it for all participants. There we go.
All right. Awesome.
Oh, it works. Great. Thanks.
Back in the before times, I got a grant from an organization called Alternate Routes so that I could work doing storytelling projects with homeless young adults and youth through about 7 weeks using a curriculum that I had developed previously, working with girls who've been sex trafficked. It was supposed to be an easy project, you know, I mean, not easy in terms of the subject matter, but in terms of the logistics. They're 5 minutes away from me, and I was really excited to be serving so hyper locally to my community. And then enter a pandemic. The organization who funded the work said, you have all the flexibility that you need. You can wait until next year. You can pivot to something virtual. You can do whatever you want. And the organization seemed to be quite flexible as well. Except every time I talked to them, they said, just so you know, though, these youth are completely languishing this summer. We have very little capacity to serve them in the ways that we normally would. We can't take them to Six Flags. The buses aren't running. There's just like so much that we are not able to do right now. So first of all, it didn't feel like it was my job to teach Zoom. And second of all, this kind of storytelling did not feel like it would pivot well to a virtual format. There's just this heart space that's shared in the work that I felt like would be terribly lost. The healing capacity of the work would not translate. So we went out and we did a massive campaign through Indiegogo and just asking for other non-cash resources. And we pivoted the project to happen outside in 1 week. And then we recorded their stories within that week, and we made a drive-in theater rather than a live show. And because the storytellers were now off the hook for having to perform on the night of the show, we knew that we could have them engage with the audience, which were now in cars, in a different capacity. And because this was homelessness we were talking about, we hit upon the idea of giving them cardboard to make signs and walk in and amongst the parked cars. So we're helping them completely address and undo some of the symbols of homelessness. So as each of their individual stories were playing, they had the front of their sign with a message that they had created that related to their story. So one person's sign said, "My Black trans life matters." And another person's sign said, "Ice skating is beautiful," because he told a story about the fact that he'd gone on his first vacation just 2 years ago at the age of 16 and had been invited to Gatlinburg to go ice skating. So each and every story that went by, the staff and I walked in front of them carrying our flashlights on their signs as they walked in amongst the cars. And then at the end of the night, as the credits rolled, all of the performers walked through the cars with their signs on the backside that said, "We matter." And it was an amazing pivot that was so much better than what I had dreamed of what it would have been in the before times. And now I am going to be traveling the state of Georgia, making drive-in theaters next year with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, because why not? And some other time, I will tell you the story of Smitty, who was one of the people who was involved in this, who just stole my heart and broke it. But this is the organizational part of that story.
Wow.
Thank you.
Wow.
Oh,
Oh my gosh.
oh.
Wow. That's extraordinary, Shannon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Did you record those stories and it's available for people to, where is that available?
I can drop the link into my website here. That's what we were just looking at. And the show itself is on my website.
That's fabulous, Shannon. What a lovely project.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, because everything happened in a week, it was a super compressed timeline. So some of the stories were actually being recorded while I was still coaching other stories. And so I have, all the praise for them and the quality of their stories, but when I do it again, there will be more time involved. And, but their stories came in super short, much shorter than what I'd coached them to be. But that's just no problem there. I'm just so proud of them for doing it and brave,
Oh, lovely.
Wow. Anyone else? Pete or Ryan? Like to share? Or comment?
How about you, Jules?
That's a tough act to follow, but I think mine does build on voice and very simple thing. And it was about listening and using my voice differently this year. But before I start, I just want to give credibility to and just a thank you to Tom. He was a voice out of nowhere one day. I had signed up for SIO many years ago, and this very pleasant, engaging voice called me on the phone the old school way and said, "I'm doing labs. Would you like to be part of it?" And really engage everybody. So it's such a difference what one phone call makes in one conversation like this with Griffin and everybody else that's been part of us today and before, Trisha Griffin Carty. So fantastic people. All right. So in the winter when everything changed, I got on some Zoom meetings and calls with people. And there was one theater director who was going to launch a show that night and figure out how to do a theater production between different apartments in Queens. And he guided all of us to take a moment before the show started to make noise. If you were in Manhattan, to lean out your window and make some noise and bang some pots for the essential workers. So I don't live in the metro area. I live outside of it. And I sat there and grumbled and said, wouldn't it be great if somebody did that here and made some noise for the essential workers? And to which my voice responded, "What's wrong with you, sister? Like, why don't you do something?" And I was like, well, we're in a suburb, you know, we have sidewalks here, but it's not the same thing. So I started with Nextdoor, and I went on there, and I got some responses around the community of who was doing what in this area, in an apartment house area, in a development. Music was played, activities were happening. I thought, that's great. So I had faith in social media. So I convinced my Irish husband one evening to come out with me at 7 o'clock, that we would have achievable goals, be only on Tuesday nights at 7. He came out, we stood there in our doorway, and we rang things like this the first night in a pot. No one came out. Now, he looked at me after a few minutes and saying, Jules, you tried. We're done. I'm going in to watch telly. And then a few minutes later, my neighbor, who is in the medical profession with her husband, texted and saying, that was great. We were at work. Thanks for thinking of us. The next day, the next week, her son came out. I thought, okay, that's progress. I got one person too. But then I went old school, and I found on my counter something that was been always there for the last few years. It was this. An old-fashioned cowbell that I had rescued from my old house in Queens, that a neighbor had given to my parents and had probably brought over with her on one of her visits back to her old country. And I used that, and I posted, and we got a few more people. But it wasn't until a friend of mine was hearing about my cowbells and reminded me, or told me about the Saturday Night Live routine that Christopher Walken did years ago. So I Googled it, grabbed the URL, and I thought, it's got to be a sign. Christopher Walken, he's a Queens guy. He's the real deal. I'm going to go and hit the streets. So with a mask, a hip grabber thing for social distancing, flyers, I started to flyer mailboxes along the street and see what would happen. Now, if this was a Disney production, I would tell you that night, thousands came out in the street and everything. We had progress. The man across the avenue on the corner came down to his driveway. He's from Pakistan. He runs the limo service. He started waving. Old couple across the street. A couple my husband swore was in the witness protection program, because they never talked to anybody, came out with the dog. So kids came out, and a neighbor down the street came out and was leaning out her window, her porch area, waving and pointing that other people were making some noise. And we kept doing that for every single Tuesday. But every Tuesday was like this big event to step over the threshold and put myself out there to make noise in the neighborhood. I mean, that was so out of character for me. But my best gift is not the fact I did that every week, is when somebody was stopping me one Tuesday morning when I had my little bag, my gloves, my mask, the whole 9 yards, and said, you're the woman who's been doing this. She goes, do you know my daughter runs to the door every Tuesday to see what quirky picture and URL you put? And she just gets so excited. And I thought, that's something good. So it's been a year of using our voices and connecting in so many different ways. So I thank you, because all of you inspire me every day. And I talk about you behind your back continuously. So thank you.
Oh,
Yay.
wonderful, wonderful.
And my husband kept showing up too. God bless him.
Julianne, before you even mentioned the Saturday Night Live sketch, I actually put cowbell in the chat, because of course, every time I hear the word cowbell, I think of it. It's so hilarious. It's one of the best, most classic moments of all time.
I have to share one thing too, what I learned, because Tom Sparrow is my guiding force. I wrote a book and he helped me finish it, and it's out, and I started to look up other people who came from Queens. And I mentioned Christopher Walken in it because I love his humor. But this year I found out why he has the speech pattern that he does. In one of the YouTube interviews I curated, he has a very stilted style that has nothing to do with acting training. how he described it. He grew up in Astoria. His family ran a bakery, but he said we always had multiple ethnicities, all of us. And the stilted style came because he was always trying to translate the nuances of the conversation or figure out the accent. So that's where that halted presentation came from, is mixing it up with other people from everywhere. And I was like, great answer. Now I understand my style. Excuse me, I have to take a glass of water here. All
So-
right.
So I've got Pete's book. Now, where do we get yours, Jules?
Amazon.
All right.
It's Learning in Queens Communication Playbook. And there's a subline, Winning Against Digital Distraction. It's a very long title with it's a very short book. So,
Super. Thank you.
and it's fun. It's all true. Thank you very much, Sarah, for asking that question. Kate, you're very quiet. And Ryan. So we're gonna do the teaching method. We're gonna sit back and wait. Wait and listen. Sometimes it doesn't always work. So while we're waiting, let's think about what else we can be doing this year. So we have this upcoming January lab we haven't planned yet, basically, and we don't have a date. But is a team, you were the one who inspired the concept, but why don't you tell us about it? The theme for January.
Was that the one about continuity and change?
Yeah, and something about new beginnings, but don't trust me because I paraphrase everything. So it's like,
I'm gonna have to refresh my memory.
mm-hmm.
Give me a little minute to go back into the email.
So yes, we're all putting each other on each other's spot today. So that's it. And what about projects that people have going on in January? Well, Gianni, you shared yours. Anybody else would like to share a project and tell us what you're up to?
Sure.
Sarah?
So the Storytelling Association of California has several projects going, which are pretty cool. One that's I like a lot is called Stories in Living Color. And the idea was to pair, initially, to pair a white person with a Black person to get to know each other and then share some stories where there was learning in terms of racism or anti-racism. And so we have our fourth, I think it's our fourth, we just did our fourth presentation, and it's been really, really wonderful. And we have folks scheduled, pairs of folks for January and February coming up. So at the Storytelling Association of California, www.storysac.org, you can learn more about it and sign up to be a pair if you know someone already or you'd like to be paired. And it's been very, very powerful. I have a brand new, wonderful friend, Sheila Arnold, whom you may know is a fabulous storyteller. And we really had a wonderful time getting to know each other and then building some stories to tell. And we were part of the first group. Anyway, that's a project that has meant a lot to me. And I think it's important. And one person at a time, we can do it. It just will take longer than we would hope.
Wow.
That sounds amazing. And then where is who's hosting this event? It's the Storytelling Night with another organization, or it's all one event?
Yeah, the idea was Rick Roberts' brainchild, and fabulous, wonderful. It came out of, what can I do for Black Lives Movement at age 75? You know, I can give money, of course, but you know, what else can I do? So telling stories, that's what we do. So how can we build and tell stories that might make a difference? And the idea was that if we could get people in different parts of the country to host a night, that would be great, which worked. And now, most recently, Zach hosted it. And then next in January, I believe Rocky Ross in Morro Bay will be hosting it. So it moves, it moves around, and we're always looking for venues of people who are interested. We supply everything. We pay a little bit to the tellers and the tech people, and love to spread the word and get more folks involved. So.
Mhm. And thank you. And Pete in the chat was giving some guidance afterwards, and you stepped in and shared that, and that's a really important that. And I'll read it for everyone. So Pete says to everyone, when I was in community college, advice from the more experienced to me was to never depend on class discussion to fill the hour. Well, thank you, Pete. But given the fact I don't follow directions really well usually, and I kind of go, okay, let's try something and see what happens. Occasionally it works out. So thank you, Sarah, for showing me that people do step up and share the most amazing things. It's like when I would interview, and I did a lot of recruiting, and sometimes there were silences, and that one more question or that something would just reap something about their background or something they didn't think was important that would just come flying out, or a connection, like 1 degree, a team. And you and I know we share a connection from somebody I hired 12 years ago, and I just happened to look on LinkedIn. I'm like, oh my God, like around a globe, back into New York, and then down to DC. It's incredible. So just those little moments where, like you said, something happens, the tire went flying, or that we get to pay attention.
I just love, we all think about, oh my gosh, no, we're having to connect differently, but I love the different. I love how many people we are connecting with, and maybe going back to your whole theme, the opportunity that we're now finding ourselves almost forced into, and we're letting go of old means and creating new ones. And I just think how tremendous that all is, for at least for all of us, if in fact we can take advantage of it. Some people can't, but at least for some folk, and I want to remember that too, but at least for some, we are able to open up a whole new world, right? And meeting. And I just want to remind myself of that. What fabulous, to borrow Sarah's word, right? Fabulous means we have nowadays to connect across the board, across the global, across ethnicities, across all sorts of things. So I'm just very excited about meeting you all for the first time.
And I think that's something about all the lessons learned this year, about all the possibilities, from witnessing my husband teaching school and running groups, from what was impossible became possible. And maybe it's not always our preferred method, but we built relationships. We met people. Like I at least had the experience of being part of SIO and built friendships through audio first and then the Zoom. But and always learning, like Shannon, I was looking at that screen and going, I didn't know they did puff up screens like that. Like there's so much innovation to help navigate this and building trust. I mean, how many opportunities do you have in outside world sometimes to have a really heartfelt sharing and conversation? And I think that's because all of you do it naturally. It starts to be a given. Like, why isn't everybody transparent? Does everybody not share a story that's compelling? And I think we have to remember that's part of the gift, and that's something we can really do a lot of listening and sharing, because people I think are going to be a little more open to that. We've experienced these rectangles and realized we have to come through them in a different way for the time being, and use them for good. So good stuff.
One of the things that I do is I run online classes relevant to writing personal histories and family histories. And what I love about doing the Zoom approach is, number one, well, I don't want to say people are older, but some of them are. So they're able to participate differently, but also seeing the joy in their face when they do share a story or find a new piece of their ancestry puzzle or whatever. There's just such joy in those finds and that work and things like that, and being able to share that, because oftentimes the work can be very isolating, not only for COVID, but also the work itself is very isolating. And to have this communication tool for them to share their stories and get additional insight is just so valuable to their self-esteem and their well-being, and all of the pieces that come with this world right now. I just, yeah.
I was just going to say, our theme was new beginnings, but as I listened to Mary, you spoke directly to the research that I'm doing. And with your permission, Jules, I'd like to share my screen and show you all a picture of my mother that I discovered last month.
Oh,
That, this was her senior picture. And then of course the class grid, and I kind of highlighted her. And the class theme was, the timber is ready, let us build.
mm,
1949. I can't tell you what one phone call meant to tracking down this piece of the family puzzle, and what those pictures represent, not only to me, but succeeding generations of my family. Um, so you kind of took me on
oh,
a detour. Thank you for that. I wanted to share that because it's brought me such joy, and it's also given me more clues to
Mhm.
unravel and again to piece together this puzzle. So Jules, I went back frantically looking through my email to make sure that I had the right theme. I had suggested new beginnings, and I distinctly remember when I made that suggestion, it was after the November general elections, and I was looking forward to, this was personally, I didn't disclose it, I was looking forward to the inauguration of our incoming president. But it's also January. I'm a January baby, and we're all about new beginnings. So that's why I had suggested that as a possible theme for our January meeting.
Okay.
New
And I think that's
beginnings.
apt because when we talk about like when we get back to the normal and maybe using outdoors it's never going to be the same because we're bringing our past forward and everything that's informed us and it impacted our lives in the last few years. So I think I'm using beginnings not as like new poster board all clean. It's all those pieces and mediums and layers of what build our experience. And this is it's just serendipity how conversations evolve here. And a lot of times when I'm in a situation or in a meeting or I've been facilitating group and I'm thinking, what's going to happen? What could happen? And some of it sometimes is taking a pause to listen and just keep in mind, I am where I'm supposed to be right now. You know,
mhm.
the thing that's supposed to happen will happen. And I think that just the connection that you and Mary and a team just shared, and it built on everybody else's sharing and listening. So I think that's an incredible thing to keep reminding me. So remind me when I say I haven't done my whole to-do list. I'm in a panic. And I say that you are supposed to, you're doing what you're supposed to. Well, some days it doesn't feel like that. So they're giving ourselves some permission and learning. This is the most collaborative group of people I've ever met. Um, I would always talk about Pete and Tom behind their backs when I went to other corporate meetings and associations. There are places where people really do lift each other up and listen and learn and do it from a good place. So
Wow.
it shows us
Shannon,
possible.
I wanted to ask you also, the work that you did just again sparked a memory, much like it did and I will stumble on your name. Is it Edam? Edam?
Team.
A
Work is
team,
team.
a team. I keep trying to say Tim, but a team. Thank you. Years ago, I produced a program for women's issues, but it was a program, it was a musical basically on women's issues in the area that I live in. So we talked of, homelessness and sexual abuse and aging and all sorts of things, but it was all couched in music, and it was used as a fundraiser for a local organization. And so you reminded me of that project in the work that you're doing. And much like, I think you left the room for a minute, but Julianne said, oh, and they have pop-up screens that you can blow up. So yes, all of that kind of reminded, I jotted down lots of notes to go back to that and revisit that. So thank you. Thank you.
This work was also a fundraiser, by the way. One of the things that I love about getting like front loading the projects with funding so that I can give work to organizations. And that way, if they want to ask for donations, at the door or during the event, then they can do that. And there's no pressure on ticket sales,
Oh.
To recoup the cost of my time or pay or any of that. So it's a good model.
Oh, wonderful.
Well, we're going to be picking people's brains for creativity as we figure out ways to get out and about and then inside in different ways. So thanks, Shannon. You belong into more than one SIG. Are you in the producer's SIG as well as this one? Or you're agnostic, you just join everybody? Or?
I joined everybody along, but this was the first one that I kind of jumped in and thought, so.
I learn something all the time. It's amazing. It's crazy.
Mhm.
I'm in the Yes SIG youth group.
And then I visit HSA on some of their initiative too. And then the producers, they're doing some interesting things about the structural part of running events. So I think everybody has something to share with each other too. So I think maybe more visiting if time permits this year, whether we're just clipping into the videos or actually showing up in real time, I think is part of the learning as we move forward. So be interested in seeing what happens at the conference. I am a blank slate on this one this year, so I'm going to be relying on everything and also reaching out for folks to participate. Board member is such a rich term, but it's pretty user friendly. So our committee member, right, a team? You've been lured into that.
You read my mind. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a slippery slope. She'll just ask you to just take one bite of the apple, And the next thing you know, it's like, I've got a live one. I'm reeling
Tom was my coach and Pete. So yes, we need help. It's boring talking to myself all the time. So the fact you answer emails is great, and you show up and you're smiling and you have good points and pivotal, compelling questions of things I didn't think about. So that is the gift of everything. So parting, we're at the top of the hour, and you will see a video. It will not be edited. It is what it is. And we will post that online for everybody to listen and learn. And then I'll be sending you a bunch of emails to ask you, what should we do? What's next? And maybe have a mini meeting that's strictly about stuff we need to do. So there's a summary. All right, listen, have safe and good holidays, making it the best you can for the people around you. And you're always in my thoughts. So thank you. And thank you. And Tom has disappeared with the baby and Pete. Okay. Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you. Happy
Thanks,
holidays.
everyone.
All
Bye.
right. See you soon. Take care. Bye.